Hello and welcome to Cleveland Classic Cinema. Tonight's film is 1957's From Hell It Came, directed by Dan Milner. And to hell it can go, as Ed Naha said in his review of this movie in his book, Horrors from Screen to Scream. I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to do much better than that, but I'll do my best. I remember seeing From Hell It Came on Ghoulardi, Big Chuck, Houlihan, and Superhost innumerable times when I was a kid. None of us ever remember the name of the movie, though, referring to it as The Tree Monster. It didn't scare me then, either. However, watching it again, I have to admit that it sucks. It sucks. That's all there is to it. What's worse is that it sucks in a very mediocre way. We've shown movies that suck in a good way. If you watch this show with any kind of regularity, you've seen them, so I don't need to enumerate them here, and since my choice of films is severely limited by how much pain I'm willing to go through in order to do this show, I get kind of picky about what we subject all of you to. When I say this sucks in a good way, I mean that, although it's awful. It's awful in an entertaining manner. Okay? While the faults of this movie are many, I will give it this. It opens with a bang. At first I thought I'd mistakenly started the movie in the middle because the first scene is where Chemo, the son of the tribal chief, is being put to death by having a knife hammered through his chest with a club. Now, why they didn't just stab him with it and, have done with it is beyond me, but we are dealing with what I think are supposed to be Polynesians or Samoans or something here. They never really identify the people who live on this tropical paradise, but I have to figure they live just off the coast of Rhode Island since they're all white actors and have no accents at all, other than the usual pidgin English you hear in movies like this one. They managed to get a good amount of exposition out of the way in the first 10 minutes of the story, to wit. The natives have been getting sick from fallout from American nuclear testing, which they call white devil dust. They conversely call the sickness the Black Plague. The amount of radiation on the island is no more than you get from a dose of X-rays, although it never mentioned that continuous exposure to that level of radiation is fatal. The witch doctor seduced Chemo's wife, Corey, to betray him. There are American scientists on the island trying to cure the natives, and the hero would like to kick in the beautiful teeth of the woman he's in love with. We also find out that the natives don't take kindly to white people getting too close to them when they hold ceremonies. The woman who runs the trading post nearly gets strangled when she strays within hearing distance of Chemo's execution. I really wish I had the trailer for this movie because you can tell how much tender loving care went into it since in the trailer they call the tree monster Baranga rather than Tabanga, which is what it's called. By the way, if you've ever wondered why people that live on tropical islands dress in loudly patterned outfits, it's because when the missionaries first came to the islands, they discovered the inhabitants walked around naked. Since walking around as God intended was apparently ungodlike, they insisted that the natives walk around clothed, forcing them to wear white sheets and togas and such. The islanders felt the white sheets were too plain, so they painted bright tropical flowers on the sheets they were given to wear as decoration, and the birth of the Hawaiian church followed soon after. See, watching this show isn't a complete waste of time after all. There are so many things to enjoy while watching this movie, it's hard to keep count. The way the natives dance after killing Chemo, the incredibly awful Australian Cockney Boston accent used by Linda Watkins as Mrs. Kilgore, the indifference the American scientists show to the fact that the natives are being slaughtered, the fact that the female scientist is the one that insists on bringing the Tabanga back to life over the objections of the men, and of course, the Tabanga itself. I'm sure someone has been kicking the idea of a tree monster around ever since the forest scene in The Wizard of Oz. But until this movie was made, no one ever figured out how to do it. Once they did, however, there was only one man to create the monster, Paul Blaisdell. Now, I should point out here that Blaisdell only designed the monster. The actual suit was based on that design and built by the Milner brothers who produced the movie. Blaisdell, however, went on to become the chief monster maker for American International Pictures, creating Frankenstein's daughter, the teenage werewolf, the teenage Frankenstein, the she-creature, the aliens from 1957's Invasion of the Saucermen, and the cucumber creature from 1956's It Conquered the World, in addition to dozens of others. In fact, Blaisdell created just about every monster used in just about every picture AIP made during the 50s. His body of work is really incredible when you consider the circumstances under which the poor guy was forced to labor. Nearly non-existent budgets, never enough time, and rarely getting any credit on screen or otherwise. He quit pictures after creating the title monster for 1958's It, the Terror from Beyond Space, which we'll be showing soon. Paul Blaisdell died from stomach cancer in 1983. Unbelievably, I couldn't find any bios for any of the actors in this movie other than Chemo and Corey, and they're secondary characters at best. However, since this wouldn't be an intro without bios, here's what I've been able to scrape together. Greg Palmer, that's Greg with 2 G's at the end, was born on January 25th, 1927 in San Francisco, California. He started out as a radio announcer and then broke into movies, also acting under the pseudonym Palmer Lee. He appeared in 147 movies and TV shows during his long career, starting with 1950's My Friend Irma Goes West. He played South Sea natives, Indians, cowboys, robbers, and military men in an amazingly varied career, playing mostly in westerns towards the end of his career when he became a member of John Wayne's stock company. In the 1950s, he auditioned for the title role in a TV series based on Al Cap's Little Abner comic strip, but he didn't get the role. He shouldn't feel too bad about that. Marilyn Monroe auditioned for Daisy May in the same show and didn't get that part either. Today he lives in Encino, California and makes frequent personal appearances for charities. Suzanne Ridgway was born on January 27, 1918 in California. As you can see in this movie, she had rather obvious assets to offset whatever she happened to lack in acting talent. Those viewers familiar with the Three Stooges and feel as I do that Shemp was just as good as Curly will recognize Suzanne from her appearances in 1956's Rumpus in the Harem and 1957's A Merry Mix-Up. As an aside here, if any of you have ever seen any of Sam Raimi's films, in particular any of the Evil Dead movies, you'll have noticed in the credits for those films a credit for fake Shemps. Now let me explain what that is and how the title came about. In the 2 Three Stooges movies I just mentioned, there are other guys standing in for Shemp in some of the scenes. They usually have their backs to the camera and run off screen as soon as possible, doing a bad imitation of Shemp's trademark sound. The reason for this is that Columbia Pictures, which had a quota of Three Stooges comedies pre-sold to distributors, often recycled old Three Stooges comedies by inserting new footage into an old one to give the plot a slightly different spin. Rumpus in the Harem is a good example of this. Just about the entire short consists of footage from one made 7 years earlier, Malice in the Palace. They did this right after Shemp unexpectedly died and before Joe Besser had taken his place as a third Stooge. There were only 2 Stooges at the time, thus they couldn't shoot new shorts yet. So they had another guy who was taller and built differently from Shemp, by the way, stand in for the missing actor. Raimi and his friends, who were huge Three Stooges fans, recognized the stand-ins as just that and dumped the unknown actors fake Shemps, which is literally what they were. Once Raimi started directing movies, it became a Raimiism for his stand-ins. Columbia Studios had Harry Cohn was notoriously cheap, paying the Stooges a pittance despite their popularity, and thought so little of the series that stories from the Curly era were recycled for not only Shemp, but also for shorts featuring Joe Besser. Well, what can I say about It Came From Hell It Came? The dialogue that's supposed to be witty falls flat. The heroes are pretty much an unlikable bunch of knuckleheads. The islanders are dumbbells, and the monster is not in the least scary. The women are kind of hot, though. Grace Matthews, the actress who plays Orchid, is downright smoking. The cat fight between Corey and Naomi is pretty hysterical. I like a good cat fight as much as the next guy, but this one, whew. The best part of it, I think, is when Corey tries to stab Naomi and, well, I don't want to spoil it. There are, however, just a few things that bother me. First of all, the so-called scientists in this movie don't seem fussed that the natives are either slaughtering each other or getting killed wholesale by the Tabanga. They also don't seem surprised that the Tabanga, a 7-foot tree, sprouts in what looks like overnight from the grave of Chemo. They also don't seem too surprised that the tree has a heartbeat and one of the knots is pulsating. Nor do they seem to notice that the thing has a face, arms, and legs. And to top it off, the woman scientist who brings it back to life is surprised when it starts killing natives. As Joe Dante said, you have to feel sorry for the actors in this movie because they have to pretend that Tabanga is terrifying. Incidentally, if you'd like a model kit of the Tabanga, there's one available from the Monsters in Motion website for the bargain price of $59.99. They got some really cool resin kits there in addition to books, DVDs, and posters, among other things. Check it out. In closing, let me quote the entire review published in the New York Times when this movie was released. It consisted of 3 words. Send it back. So right now, sit back, relax, and enjoy From Hell It Came, right here on Cleveland Classic Cinema.